This is Talking My Walking. I am Rodrigo Ribeiro, just another voice in the wilderness. Today I'm going to talk about how could we, how could humanity, um, what would be required to avoid being controlled, our societies being controlled by the worst among us. Um, this is not a rhetorical question. This is the reality, and it seems to me that we do not really um, we don't have a comprehensive. We have when we need it. We have class analysis, which for me is crucial. Without class analysis, just forget about it. You don't get the one of the basic points. But it's not only that. We need to go deeper than that in order to understand why we have been ruled for several millennia. Not it's before it is exactly what I call this the imperialist civilizational paradigm. Okay, we call them the great this, the great that. Every country has the great who what, and then we have these narratives, this historic framing, who does it and why, in order to emphasize the national pride, about things that basically were criminal enterprises for plunder, for genocide, for whatever. And nonetheless, we learn at school and in historic books that we have to be proud of our greatness. Okay, it is nonsense, but it is nonsense with a purpose, and the purpose is that we, by glorifying these myths, by this fake honor, this fake understanding of what civilization should mean, we can be civilized. But because there is a point here I want to make. It's not civilization versus savagery. All right, you don't have savages and barbarians in one side and civilization in the other side. Civilization, has always been about exploitation, enslavement, about one simple thing. This has to do with class, and that thing is to classification, to stratification, to make us not understand, but have a perception of reality where certain part of us, based on color, gender, race, whatever it is, are lesser than us. They are less intelligent. They are less humans. They are animals. Okay? So this pyramid scheme is is part of our a culture of enslavement. A culture of enslavement. Why is it a culture of enslavement? It's a culture of enslavement because it makes us comply with the reality that we have to process and compare and think, as the pursuit of self-interest, part of this another layer of deceit and another layer of control and social engineering, socio-political engineering, that we compare to each other. And in order to avoid trouble, in order to have the possibility that we and our families, because is the limits of what we perceive as the pursuit of well-being, and the well-being is basically about us and eventually our families, or some of our close friends eventually. So we always are comparing and making choices based on what to avoid trouble in one way, and to maximize the opportunities, to maximize whatever can help us to implement our socioeconomic condition. So and we think about this as skills. Our social skills are basically social skills based on comparing to each other, and thinking what kind of how can I take advantage of the circumstances of the situation, and usually in a war, in a competition against others. We are basically live in a paradigm where we are not, does not set us, does not prepare us for cooperating in any sense. We only cooperate if we, and then we translate. I mean, we only cooperate under the frame of what we can gain out of it. So that the pursuit, the principle of the pursuit of self-interest. And therefore we translate this, it is translated by academics, it is translated in science, okay? It is translated in many forms of from evolutionary biology to evolutionary psychology to social psychology to there are lots of sciences and lots of literature and research and so many fields that they are not trying to explain the human condition. They are doing exactly the opposite. They are explaining the human condition through the justification of an existing paradigm that is dehumanizing a dysfunctional paradigm or civilization. And this is very important to understand, very important to understand, if we want to understand why we are ruled and controlled by the worst amongst us. Okay? My analysis and my reflections, I truly try to understand the human sociocultural condition, or the nature of the sociocultural condition of human nature, and through this holistic, comprehensive analysis. And this is a very extensive. I mean, there is a lot of that's a lot of themes and variables and things to take in account, which I cannot. It's humanly impossible to talk about it or to give to explain it in a single video. That's why if people want to understand my thinking, or if which is probably not easy for many people, not because it's my thinking is extraordinarily whatever, but it goes against the grain, okay? And therefore people most will say, oh, that's it is on my where I try to have make sense of this reality, make sense of the socio-cultural nature of the human condition through a 360 degree. It's different. It's from different angles and lenses, and that I need. This needs to be. I need to approach it. I mean, I don't do it intentionally. I go with what in my brain, in my cognitive network. I feel this is about really doing it in the most spontaneous way. And by spontaneity, I don't mean that this is not coming from anywhere, okay? What I'm saying that I don't like to prepare it. I can try to prepare something, I can say that I'm going, and then when I need to be, I need to follow what my kind of mood of the day. And it's very, so that's why I never know exactly. I know I have always several things that I want to talk and to put together, but I always have this is why I don't like to write. It's so painful to write, and because it's a mess, and I keep writing things and stuff, but I don't try to make sense of it, to really transform it into a book, because it's not my thing. I thought in the past that I wanted to write, okay? And I came to the realization that it's not my thing. My thing is oral communication. I like to listen. I don't even like to read as well. I mean, I don't even like to write in the sense that physically anymore. So this is just to say that for those that find my work in the web, if they only listen to a single video, they will not get what I'm trying to do. And that's just what I want to say about this. That's I never, by watching a video or listening to me only once, and you don't get it. You might get what I'm trying to say, but since I try to make sense of things in a real a wider and holistic perspective, it's not easy to start with, and it is a process. As if you want to change and you want to understand yourself as a socio-cultural being, you need to engage in a process, what I call the conscious transformative process, because there are resistances that come from our biases and prejudices, and therefore everything is a process. And is as I say frequently, if we do not really understand reality, ourselves, and everything else in between as processes, systems, and relations, we don't get it. We don't get it. That this is, I'm absolutely sure about what I'm saying. This is not even about this is not an opinion. Okay. So basically, what I'm trying to point out, to emphasize, is the need to go as deep as possible for all of us in a process by which we do understand the very nature, the socio-cultural nature of ourselves. This is for me basic for us that want to live in a peaceful world, that want to have lives with meaning and purpose, that want to cooperate, that want, I mean, that want to that our children and grandchildren and and everybody lives in really, it's not a big, I mean, I'm not talking about a big happy family that the whole world blah blah blah. No, it's not. Please don't. There will be always troubles and problems and wars, and conflicts, but we can truly build a culture of liberation, individual liberation for the collective well-being, based on the true understanding of our very nature, how it operates, and how the ones that lack the traits, the basic human traits, the basic traits of a social species, that what we are the ones that have the edge in when it comes to especially complex societies, to over time, as Mr. Bastiat said, they will create the legal systems to authorize them, and they will create the moral codes to glorify them. So we end up allowing the worst people amongst us to create the legal, the political, legal, and economic and cultural political systems to authorize us to exploit and enslave us, and to make the moral codes, the cultural and ideological narratives to glorify them. And then that's what we follow. And we become followers. And when you talk about free choice and freedom of expression and freedom of this and freedom of that, and basically we are slaves. That's what followerism is. You know, that's not because we don't follow each other in the sense that we listen to each other, that we learn from each other. As I always say, we are bits and pieces of other people, knowledge and experience. This is very important to understand because it's real. That's the reality. But that reality, which is part of our nature, is also full of responsibility. And why? Because that's how manipulation also works. That's how we cannot avoid to be indoctrinated and instrumentalized, but we can avoid to be indoctrinated and instrumentalized to serve a criminal system, a system that is run by gangsters, by psychopaths and sociopaths, narcissistic and megalomaniacal, opportunists without scruples. And when we revere them and we transform them in idols, and we follow celebrities, empty people, they are empty of values and principles, but they have the power to control them, to control ourselves, to give the pyramid by controlling. Let me explain. By controlling, I mean they give us the patterns and paradigms. Okay, they give us the examples. They give us the framework, the frame of mind and frame of work of the reality that is supposed to be the paradigm to follow. And of course, for we are different people, we have different experiences, we have different personalities and temperaments, and therefore we are going to develop according to many to the diversity of experience, and the result of all that, we are going to be more to bend more for this or that or blah blah blah. But in the end, it doesn't matter, because that division is important. That tribalization process is important to keep them in power, because it's about a distraction. Division and tribalization in complex societies, as atomization and many other tools, are basically function as a distraction and as an emotional drain. You know, we drain our emotional and psychological lives into those into those sinkholes. Okay, in those black holes. All right, and that's how we become. Because, for example, with young men, full with testosterone in really high levels, and then we become victims of fanaticism, because then we can't, our grievances and our problems and our traumas from our infancy and our society, and for all the things that are going in dysfunctional societies where we live, they are going to be those grievances are weaponized. You know, that's the moral weapon, is the moral and intellectual and cultural weaponization or grievances that are used to instrumentalize people, to indoctrinate and instrumentalize people, and in this case young men, for example, and transform them into useful idiots and cannon fodder, as Nazis, for example, or fascists, which are basically people that are dehumanized and ready to be a weapon, a tool for those elites that are psychopaths. And these can be also psychopaths and sociopaths, but many of them are not. They are desensitized towards a specific group, or towards a society or a political target, a racial target, a religious target. And if we do not go to the roots of these problems, and the roots of these problems are many, and we can understand it in many ways, but we will not create a society or societal and civilizational paradigm and an economy that is humanized, that is shaped by human values. And when I'm talking about human values, is when we perceive themselves as part of the web of life, and culture and civilization as part of the web of nature. Not everything that we have been building, or most of it throughout these 10,000 years of history, is basically at war with everything, at war against nature, at war against the living community, at war against the people that doesn't look like us, because we are the civilized ones. You just think about the mission that the Europeans took, the endeavor to civilize the world, to spread the word of God. You know, this moral superiority, this racial superiority, this civilizational superiority, where does it come from? You know, we can analyze it through using psychology, evolutionary psychology, social psychology, evolutionary biology, neurosciences, trying to explain this is the human behaviors. But we already are using models and working and language framing that is basically the language of the imperialistic civilization paradigm. It's not free. Ideas, as ideas have consequences, and we use ideas, we use frames, tools, ideological tools and frames in order to understand the reality. We do it whether we are people with a scientific mind, or we always use frames, lenses. And if we do not go and try to understand where those lenses and frames come from, we always, I mean, we achieve sound knowledge in many fields. We can do it, but in order to understand the socio-cultural nature of the human condition, we need to go deeper than that, and we need to really deal with exactly who are we. You know, who are we as a species? And that is not, we can really understand it and build a sound culture, a liberatory, I mean, a culture that really liberates us. And by liberation, I essentially mean that we can build a culture and a society and an economy and a civilization that enhances the immunity against being controlled by the worst people amongst us. We can create that culture. This is not an utopia. We can do it, but we are going in the wrong direction. With technoscientism and technofixism as the new theologies from long ago, but now much more empowered, we are going to tell stories to us. I mean, we already are being indoctrinated and instrumentalized to believe that these new religions, these dominant religions, are the ones that are going to save us, to escape from collapse. or accept collapse by trying to escape to another planet. This is as delusional as it can get, But nevertheless, again, this is why we can only escape these traps, these intellectual and cultural and ideological traps, if we go to the roots of the problem and understand ourselves in a truly holistic way. And by holistic, I mean that we understand ourselves as part of the web of life and culture as part of the web of nature. And by culture, I mean culture, economy, politics, science, and everything else. We cannot be humans, and at the same time, or we cannot have a humanized society, and at the same time be at war with everything, competing for crumbs, destroying our humanity, and with so much knowledge and information, and that's why we don't get it. That's why I always have to. I mean, sometimes I really it makes me angry. Okay, when I see people that, oh, if you read books, if you listen, no, you can. You see the Germans, for example, which is a society that is highly cultivated. You know, that's a society that have a lot of access to culture, to art, music, everything. You know, I'm just giving an example. Like, we cannot give that example to the Americans, because the Americans, as we know, only the certain elites are cultivated in this more sophisticated way. But the Germans have a sophisticated cultural background, and nevertheless, they fall easily in these traps again. They are falling into it again. And this lack of culture, or lack of literature, or lack of knowledge, of course not, is lack of understanding of the socio-cultural condition of the human being, and how it can be weaponized against us by those that really lack the basic traits. These are not, don't get these psychopaths and these are sickness. It can be a sickness, but I'm talking about traits, not sickness. This is the people that those traits, they lack those traits for whatever reason, innate or acquired. They lack compassion, empathy. They don't want to cooperate. They don't want to reciprocate. They don't feel solidarity. So therefore they are focused on themselves, on their objectives, their hedonistic objectives. They want glory. They would like to. They want to perpetuate. They are narcissistic to the point. They megalomaniac. They want to perpetuate their. You know, they want to be recognized by history as, again, go back to the great. Alexander the Great. This the great. That the great. Great in what? In killing. Why have we been raised in cultures that always glorify empires and imperialists? Why? Why is that? What does that have to do with our humanity? Why do we confuse it with civilization? That's the civilizational advancements. Okay. Again, they use technological advancements, which are always have they have an impact, sometimes positive, not always, but sometimes positive. uh, for the benefit of the whole society, okay? I don't deny that. But they always use these technological or even scientific advances to as a way to convey a message of cultural superiority, of racial superiority, of civilizational superiority, okay? And therefore, it gives them the right, the God-given right, to oppress, to control, to repress, to take over, to grab the land, the resources, to kill people, you know, to wipe out entire indigenous groups. And so many of us don't see anything wrong in that. We even think it is fair because that's humanity. That's how humanity progress. Okay, that is this that as if progress is as if, for example, as if we can justify genocide and say this genocide is justifiable because it is for progress. What is progress? What has been progress? I'm not against progress per se, but you know, progress as according to the civilization, not according, through the imperial civilizational paradigm, is plunder, is accumulation of wealth, is concentration of power, is not liberation, is not to help people, is to give more power and control to the elite that do not represent us. They do not represent us because exactly they lack the traits that are basic human traits, are basic traits of any species, social species, that could not survive if was not for. Can you imagine humanity surviving? Those small groups, small tribes, small troops, whatever you want to call them, without cooperation, reciprocity, empathy, compassion for each other. Okay? Can you imagine that? They were competing with each other. It's so stupid. But people can picture it that way. And why? They should ask themselves why. Why do they picture everything through these lenses? Lenses of competition, of the pursuit of self-interest, of greed, of selfishness, of the so-called survival of the fittest, which is not survival of the fittest, it's the survival of the meanest. But people buy into these stories and they don't ask themselves why. Yeah. So, all right, this is what I have for today. As I said, this is just one layer, or one, if you just a small part of what. That's why I recommend for those that feel some curiosity about what I'm talking about, or trying to reflect, they need to listen to other stuff. You don't need to agree with me. I want you to think. I want you to be skeptical. I want you to train your critical skills, because this is a process. We are born with the skills. We need to train them. If you do not train them, and you need to understand what you are doing. By training them, you also need to go to the process. How do you do? I mean, what am I really doing? You need to question yourself all the time, every day, to question your processes, your frame of works, your intellectual tools, and everything else. You need to do it. Otherwise, what do you? I mean, all right. Thanks for listening. I will be back soon.